This week on The Dead Life, we will hear from an amazing woman who's a millennial, a massive social media influencer, and a spiritualist. Tom McMullen and I talk about the boomer generation and Gen X astrology on the show, but we rarely go in depth on getting to know the millennial generation. Many people think of them as a generation of unicorns, 11th place trophy winners who are a bit whiny and who live with their parents too long, but there's more to them than that. And if you're a millennial and that offended you, just know that there's a lot of you out there who are tougher than that, who are sarcastic and have a sense of humor, and we're so proud of your passion. So I thought that it's about time that we check in with someone who grew up millennial and take a deep dive into 30-something spirituality. Meghan King's a stunning tough cookie, a single mom with a big heart, and a spiritual center. Let's get to know her, find out what she's learned on her spiritual journey, and what she hopes to teach others about loving themselves. You can find me on Instagram at Medium Allison, on my Facebook fan page. You can binge on my YouTube videos, and you can see me live. For ticket information, go to AllisonDubois.com. Meghan, thank you for sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me. I love that intro. The millennial description was hilarious, by the way. I'm an elder millennial.
I love how there's always a distinction in any generation where they're like, okay, the newer ones are not the same, or the older ones aren't the same, and we all have distinctions in our generation. It's kind of funny.
We are, but you know what's funny is I think I relate as a millennial more to Gen Z than Gen X. I love Gen Z. I think that, I mean, you know, they all have their quirks, right? But
right.
Like usually the generation above detests the generation below, and I'm not one of those.
You know, in astrology, millennials are supposed to pattern the boomer generation. So your parents, basically.
Right.
So you have more of the protesting and sort of that energy of what the hippies had in the late 60s. And
well, that's me.
Yeah, and Gen Z is going to mirror Gen X. They seem to be a bit of a lighter version of us, but they're into, you know, rock and roll and wanting to listen to some of the old stuff, and they don't care if they offend you, and they're a little harder to offend than other people, and I like that
more
about
emo.
them. Yeah. Well, it depends, because I have 3 daughters. 2, well, they're all overachievers, but they graduated in college in 3 years, you know, summa cum laude, and they're Gen Z, and they just sort of hit the ground running. And I'm like, millennials, for the younger ones that are slow to start, they're going to eat their lunch. They're just going to, Gen Z is going to eat their lunch.
The millennials like to wait for things to happen.
And come to them. Right.
Just like, let me receive.
Yes. I
don't
totally
think
agree.
I fit into that, but overall, I agree with you.
You know, the older millennials do tend to be more like Gen X in the sense that if you watch the movies from the early 2000s, they had choreographed dance scenes, they had rom-coms in the movies, you know, they still bothered to pluck their eyebrows and put on their makeup.
Yeah, they still cared.
Yeah, they were chimpanzees. So that's more of how I see them mirroring Gen X, in that they were social beings.
Right, we're social beings with social media.
Right. And you are amazing at it. And I fought tooth and nail. I'm like, I really hate this, but it's part of the beast, and it helps you to connect. Yeah, it's a beast.
It's a double-edged sword.
It very much so. And you and I have we'll talk about that too, because we've both been through that.
Oh yeah.
How did you first become interested in spirituality?
Well, this is, I haven't told you this yet, Allison. I did tell you that but the launching point for me in my spiritual journey was your books. 18 years ago when you wrote, what were the 2 that you...
Don't Kiss Them Goodbye and We Are Their Heaven were my first 2.
Yes, I read both of those back to back. And it's because my grandmother got me interested. So she was
Thanks, Grandma.
dying of breast cancer. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was dying of breast cancer, and her sister, so my great aunt, was there a lot, kind of at her bedside, and her sister told me that she read palms, and so she would read my palm, and I just was fascinated by that. I grew up in a staunchly Catholic family, and
I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So we really didn't talk much about spirituality outside of the dogma of the Catholic Church, and So when I met this great aunt, I really didn't know. I was just so interested, and my grandma was open to it too. My mom never really said much, but she wasn't against it, but she wasn't into it.
Right.
So that was the launching point for me. So my grandma told me about you, and I read your books, and then my mother started getting really interested in spirituality and you in particular. And she was so inspired by the show Medium, which was inspired by your life.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that was my launching point. So thank you.
Wow. I'm honored actually. And I love.
So am I.
I love hearing
I'm
the
honored
people.
to be here with you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Knowing
Isn't that crazy? I'm fanning out right now. I'm like a fangirl. I can't believe that 18 years ago, who would have thought that I would be talking to my spiritual mentor? This is pretty incredible for me.
I'm sure we're going to know each other for a long time.
I hope so. Yes, me too.
So to your family, though, I would say historically, even though they were raised in Catholicism, a lot of the immigrants that came over from Europe were into mysticism, and it was something that they brought with them. So even though they were religious, they had this, learning how to read the stars, knowing if the crops were going to come in, for the farmers.
Yeah. Well,
and so it goes really far back.
That makes sense because my ancestors were Irish and mainly Irish, but German, English. I mean, I'm as white as they come. I'm strictly Western European. Like there's literally 100% Western European. So, and not the
Joe.
rich kind.
You and Joe both are. He's white and whiter.
Same, yeah.
And the Irish part, though, Irish are notoriously seers, meaning they're prophetic. They can see things before they happen, and they're very spiritual. So I'm not surprised that you're Irish. And on the Germanic side, they also, with like earth magic and making potions and working on people because they couldn't get to doctors. So they had
sense.
So the women in the village were delivering the babies and making the salves for headaches and whatever illness you had. And so that was a big part of a time where they didn't have, WebMD.
Right.
Where they could just log on at any time or get to a doctor and they needed help. You're going to go to the medicine woman in the village.
And that makes sense for me too, just even your explanation of that, because that's been something that has, I think, been bred out of us as in Western culture. And as I've gotten older and more spiritual, I've gotten more interested in the herbal remedies and, how those natural salves and other things can assist us. And not only just with the medicinal side of it, like the physical medicine side of it, but the spiritual medicine side of it and how those two are related.
It's true. Especially with the American Indian culture that I grew up in Arizona, we learn how to smudge houses. So, you burn the white sage to clear all energy out, bad and good, and then you burn sweetgrass to restore positive energy into your home. So with Margaret Jameson is my earth magic professor for Dead University, and she makes she grows everything, and she's a what are they, granny
magic?
Yeah, but the background, the Appalachian grannies. Yeah, so they came over from Europe and settled in Virginia, and they were the ones that she's like a descendant, so multi-generational Appalachian granny. That's why she's granny magic.
The Appalachian, like the whole, hillbilly culture. I mean, that is fascinating to me. I just read the book Uneducated.
Yes.
It's a memoir about a man who grew up in Appalachia, and it's just fascinating. That's just a whole subculture in America that is so intriguing to me. And then, I mean, with the Native American smudging like you grew up with, I had to do that in my old house. I probably should do it in this house too, but I had a ghost there, and he showed himself to me one time, and I was like, I was terrified. I was like, Ghost, I called him Ghost Boy, and I did not want to see an apparition again. And I think he was as scared as I was, honestly.
That's funny.
Or was as surprised as I was, I should say.
It's funny because a friend of mine, Gretchen Bonaducci, she used to be married to Danny Bonaducci from the Partridge Family, if the name sounds familiar.
Yes,
but
it does.
She's a cutie patootie redhead that runs a Airbnb in Bisbee, Arizona. and she had activity in her house, and I'm getting this sense with you too. Sometimes they're drawn to you because you're just beautiful, and they like being around beautiful women. So often, usually it's a family member or somebody that relates to you from the other side. But sometimes those guys who had an appreciation for beauty still have an appreciation for beauty.
Ghost Boy was like 10 years old or something. I was
God,
like, what are you? Yeah.
Maybe you reminded him of his mom.
That's what I think it was, because it was when I was pregnant, and he was wearing period clothing and everything. I mean, I think he was just kind of like a curious little boy.
He could be. Sometimes they're tied to the land where your home is built, where a long time ago they had a farm there. I mean, you have to do the history, but I think the fact that you were motherly and you had that motherly energy, you felt safe to him. That's usually... He
always would play with the kids' toys, too. That part didn't bother me when he would, like, turn on a toy or something.
Yes.
Oh, I love that, too.
Yeah.
It was kind of just playful and mischievous.
Yeah.
And when I saw him as a full apparition, I did the sage and everything, and because I didn't want him to go in my kids' rooms, but and I didn't want to. I said, "Don't touch me, don't talk to me, and don't show yourself to me. Otherwise, you can screw with the electricity all you want, play with the kids' toys all you want." And he would do it on demand. Yeah,
that's so funny.
Yeah,
and you can tell them to go away if you want them to go away. I would say that with your kids, because abilities are genetic, and being sensitive runs in families as it does in yours. Your kids, one of them probably just would have done what my daughter Fallon did and said it was an imaginary friend. They think they're imaginary friends. And so they're not actually... Spiritual children aren't afraid of other children that are in spirit, or the children in spirit. So your kids probably would have been unbothered by the...
We called him Ghost Boy, and the kids were my kids were little, and they weren't afraid of Ghost Boy, but I never was either, so they didn't sense that fear from me.
Yeah, kids look to their parents and their parents' reactions to decide how they're going to react to the other side, and it's why I'm hoping your generation raises kids who are intuitives but not doormats. That they're sensitive, but they'll tell you, they have borders and boundaries, and they'll tell you where to go.
I hope so. That's what I tell my daughter. I'm like, you are strong. You have that light in you. You got to use it. You have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wield the power. So when you were a little girl, did you also sense the other side? Did you have an idea of what life after death was, or did you not really think about it because you were a kid?
I thought about it a lot. And I was always fascinated by it. And I was always fascinated by religion. I remember being in 7th grade, and that's when you're supposed to get confirmed in the Catholic Church. And basically the confirmation is saying that, you accept that Jesus was God and yada, yada. You accept the faith of the Catholic religion. And I remember sitting there and talking to my mom and saying, I don't think that Jesus was God. Like, Jesus is really cool, but like, he's just a human, and I can't get confirmed. And my mom was like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just
say it. Yeah. Just repeat after the man.
Totally. So this was always something, spirituality was, and religion and how those relate, because they're not the same.
Right.
That was always something that I constantly thought about. And I remember when I was a little girl, I was probably 3, maybe 4 years old, going to my first funeral and seeing my great grandma in the casket and thinking about the death. And it's something that has stuck with me. And I wasn't sad at all, but I remember observing all of the sad people around me and just not having really a reaction or an emotion around it. I was just observing.
You probably didn't really understand what was going on in that sense.
I knew that she was not living anymore, but I just didn't find it sad. Honestly, she was really old, and I kind of found her scary when she was alive.
We all aspire to look like the Crypt Keeper one day.
Definitely. That's definitely my goal. But so death was always something that I thought a lot about.
I always found in, like, when you'd watch television and you'd see, there was a Disney show, and there were kids, and there was a little girl in the attic, and I just remember, and they could see her and interact with her, and I was so fascinated by that. And any movie, and there weren't a lot of them back then that depicted ghosts and apparitions on the other side. So it was harder to come by then. There was no Medium or other shows that followed to sort of learn from or look to or identify with. And when I was 6, I went to my great grandfather's funeral, and I did what you did. I was observing. I wasn't sad. I thought he was taking a nap though. I thought he was taking a nap and he was going to wake up better. But he was my first real visit. It was after his funeral at bedtime.
What happened?
So I was in bed and my mom tucked me in and closed the door. I hated that she closed the door. I always had a nightlight. I could always feel things out there, and I'm like, can't you just leave the door open? But my great grandfather appeared at the foot of my bed, and he had died of intestinal cancer. So a very painful way to die. And my mom was really close to him. And he said, tell your mom I'm not in pain anymore and I'm still with her. So I jumped out of bed and ran in my mom's room and conveyed the message. And she looked at me and she said, go back to bed.
Did she believe you?
My mom didn't talk about things like that back then. Now, of course, she's like, yeah, of course, I'm super spiritual. I was like, really? Are you when that happened?
Yeah, right. Really, Mom?
I don't remember that back then, but my grandma was the one that would talk about it with me. So I had my grandma Jenny, but no, my mom sent me back to my room, and I don't know if she believed me or not. I think she was emotionally drained from the day as well, and just couldn't deal with a child. And I went back to my room and he was gone. And so that confused me.
Yeah, that would be confusing.
I was like, was he here? Was he not? Because when I saw him at the foot of my bed, there were no lines on his face. He looked happy. Did
he look younger?
So they'll appear to children around the age they were when they died, because it's all we know them as. But he had no lines on his face and a glow to him, sort of that iridescent, fluorescent beauty to him. And he looks strong. I don't know how to explain that, but he looks strong.
I understand what you mean. I don't have dead people visit me like when I'm conscious, but sometimes I have lucid dreams where they're there, and that's how they look. And I can and they're different.
Right. You can tell they're not living in the physical world. There's
I know they're dead. In my dream, I know they're dead, but they're usually like there to, I think sometimes they deliver a message, sometimes they're just there. And it's like, I get a feeling that, okay, like their soul has kind of moved on or something.
Or they want to tell you something, and do you want to know? I
know. Oh gosh. My uncle came to me a few weeks ago. He died of cancer, and he looked healthy, but he looked concerned, but healthy, but concerned. Yeah. And so I told my cousin, her father, and she just said it made her feel good. But I keep thinking about that because it was real. It didn't feel like a dream.
He probably looked concerned about his loved ones. He's seeing them hurt and feeling their pain because they're empathic, so they feel what we feel. And so his concern probably had more to do with them knowing that he's there and being able to move on. So he was letting you know that he's there still and that he's okay, but that he's concerned about his family.
You know what? The family, my cousins and my aunt were around. They were in the dream too, but they weren't real. I could tell they weren't real, but he was. And they didn't know he was there, but I knew he was there, and he was just it was interesting.
Well, that's not so different from in the reality of where he's at. Basically, he's saying they can't see me, you can. They're not real. They're sort of emotionally removed, like in pain, and you're present with me. So you were on the same plane as him.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. And that's why I told my cousin, I was like, I think that he came to me because there's some sort of blockage or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're probably blocked by pain. That's what I call it.
Okay.
When you lose a father, especially, this wall goes up around your heart because you can't take one more bad thing happening to you. And it's sort of a protective mode. Even if they die of natural causes or when they're older, you still go back into child energy where all of a sudden you remember daddy picking you up when you were a little girl and like putting you on his shoulders. And so they're going through this whole mourning and grieving period, and you're removed enough to be able to objectively see him and talk to him and still care about him, but in a more objective manner.
That was the most recent thing that happened to me in one of those kind of lucid dreams or whatever visitations, whatever you want to call it. But one of the coolest ones was when my friend, one of my good friends from high school, she passed away from a brain tumor after a long battle.
That's
and
terrible.
She came to me a couple times in dreams and told me things. And I would tell her sisters, and the sisters would, I mean, it didn't really mean much to me, or it would be,
Right.
I don't even remember what it was. It kind of left my brain.
Sure.
But it was something like, let's say, for instance, like a polka dot raincoat or something.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know. I have to tell you about the polka dot raincoat. And then the sister would cry and say, I just bought my daughter a polka dot raincoat. And I was like, okay, like, all right,
That's
like
cool.
message delivered, the end.
Right.
But she stopped. It happened to me like 2 or 3 times with Yolanda is her name. And then nothing.
Well, she was probably needing you to convey the messages that you did, so her daughter, or so her sister knows that she's still seeing her daily life. You know, that she saw her buy the polka dot raincoat, and that's validation that she's still there.
Yeah.
Once you release those messages, often it will leave your mind because you've conveyed that message. It's been passed on, and you should.
That would be a lot to remember. Can you like? What if you remembered everything?
You know, I still hear from people that are like, you read me 10 years ago, remember? I'm like, not really. I read 350 people a year.
I mean, that's a lot to remember.
and that's not including live events. So no. But some of them do really stick with me because they're so unusual in manner of death, or the person that died is like my daughter's age, like something where I can relate to it. I remember a lot more of the nuances, but usually once you convey messages, you let it go, and it's not so it doesn't become a part of you and manifest physically in you.
Yeah, because my gosh, that's a heavy burden to carry otherwise.
Yeah, it's a lot. And a lot of people who have abilities who think, oh, I can do this professionally. It's like, well, be prepared for that, because it takes a very thick skin and a strong backbone to do this. I've brought through more than 10,000 people, anywhere from, murdered children to a woman being stung by bees who fell off her horse, and then her neighbor rushed over to help her and didn't see her and ran over her, and that's how she died.
Gosh.
Like I've heard everything. So people who want to do it professionally should just know they're not all grandmas that die in their sleep.
No kidding. It's so tragic.
You have to be able to adjust your energy to the living person to be able to help them in the way they need to be helped, and also be true to the dead and honor them and do a just sort of secretarial job for them in relaying their messages to the living. So it's really a balancing act.
With the relaying the messages in the secretarial job, are spirits ever too blunt, where it's almost like too direct of a message for the human to like process accurately?
I wouldn't say that they're too blunt. I would say sometimes the person had a huge chemistry with the living person, like their wife or their husband or boyfriend or girlfriend. And since I'm the secretary, they'll flirt through me.
Oh, really?
And that feels a little odd. And I've had women show me certain lingerie that they would wear, and do you remember?
That's kind of sweet, though.
It's kind of sweet, but I feel like I'm like
a voyeur.
I do. I feel a little like I shouldn't be there. Like I'm a peeping Tom. But
see, now you come on my podcast about sex, talk about ghost sex.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Well, and on the other side, people ask me about that too. And it's interesting because soulmates on the other side, you still appear in your physical form in whatever was your happiest day in the physical world. Like whatever that age was is what you revert to. You fell in love, you got married, you had a baby. Sometimes even people who got a divorce will go back to when they were happy at that time.
I could
with
see
that
that.
person.
Not for me, but for
right,
others.
even though it didn't work out. Well, I can't imagine you being single long unless you want to.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
There's some suitors out there.
I have no doubt there are suitors out there. So on the other side, you can relive those moments, whether that spouse is passed or not, or with the spouse. And often I'll have men say, I got us a table, and they'll describe the restaurant, and it'll be back in time when they had like torch singers or something really romantic
so
and cool. Yeah, I
want to go there.
I know. We need more of that. Now they just crowd tables into a space and it's all like California food. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you center yourself when life gets messy and you are going through, a painful breakup? I'm sure you have 3 kids. Is that right?
Yeah. So my kids are 6, 4.5, and 4.5 twins.
Oh, wow.
And one of my twins has cerebral palsy. And so I became a single mom when my oldest had just before she turned 3 years old. So I was in the weeds, and then the pandemic hit, and I'm just trying to, keep my head afloat. And so I went through, I knew that in order to survive, I needed to process and, keep myself, healthy in whatever way that meant.
Yeah.
And so at the time I do what I still do now, which is, I call them emotional releases. And the reason I started the emotional releases is because, I had 2 herniated discs in my cervical spine.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't move my head. Actually, my friend Yolanda I was telling you about, she was at the end, and I couldn't even go see her because I had to go to the ER instead. And so I saw 4 different doctors. 2 and 3 of the doctors told me I couldn't lift anything heavier than 10 pounds for like 6 weeks, and I had 2 little babies in cribs.
Wow.
And I couldn't lift them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I have surgery? And then the 4th doctor told me, no, there's no weight restriction, lift whatever you want. And I was like, well, this doesn't make medical sense.
Right.
This should be a standard across the board. And he was like, well, actually, we don't really know why you have the pain there, because if we did an MRI on every human of your age, some might have pain, some might not, and some might have...
So they're rolling the dice on that you're going to be fine because you're young. So why give you an MRI?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I had pain. I had 2 epidural steroid injections, and I didn't even get epidurals during my births. Wow. And so that's how terrible the pain was. Well, I said to myself, there's got to be a reason behind this. So I started reading some books by John Sarno, who is an MD neurologist. And he basically was studying why do, some patients have pain associated with a herniated disc, for instance, and some don't. Mm-hmm. And he discovered that it's basically the body's not processing emotions and taking it out with inflammation places in the body that are normal factors of aging. But like in our logical society, makes sense that we can like pinpoint a physical ailment and then quote unquote fix it with surgery. Well, really you're just band-aiding that issue, and you'll get carpal tunnel next, or you'll get,
until that emotion gets addressed, whatever the issue is. Yeah.
So what I started doing was emotional releases, and I would go outside, usually after the kids were asleep, and I would let my inner child come out, and I would say, I'm mad that my son has a disability. I'm mad that my husband left me. I'm mad that I have to work full time and I can't, pay attention to my kids. All these childish things, even, everything from like, I'm mad that my boobs aren't bigger, anything childish, and just scream. And then I would cry and cry and cry. And then I would say, but I'm grateful for a roof over my head, or I'm grateful. Mm-hmm. And then I would set intentions. And after doing those emotional releases, the inflammation started going down, and I avoided the surgery. And I felt so empowered by the power that I could wield over my physical body through the spiritual world. And that it just catapulted me and my spirituality and the power that I have, because I felt like I had a little bit of God in me, and I do,
Right.
and we all
Right.
do.
Sure.
And so I was like, I can utilize that to make myself healthy in all of the ways.
Yes.
And so by discovering that, I still have to go back to it every now and then, because I'll feel that inflammation kick in, and that's my body telling me, look, you got some emotions to work through. I'll take baths, I'll do meditation, but those are hard to do. That's hard. It's hard to even take 10 minutes out of my day,
Right.
because I'm a busy working mom
Yeah.
with kids.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
you get it.
What you're saying is exactly what Diane Goldner talks about. She's my healer professor. And
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when she diagnoses or deals with her clients, she looks at what their symptoms are and then diagnoses basically where that's stemming from, what emotional pain needs to, or wound needs to be healed. So everything you're saying makes complete sense to me. And when you set your intentions, that's called earth magic. Just so you know.
Oh,
So
I
you're a
love that.
natural little witch there.
I kind of am. You know, the first time that I found out my ex-husband cheated on me, I was just, I handled it as, a grown-up handles it, which is
Sure.
you forge ahead.
You burn
But I
his
remember
clothes.
there was one moment.
Just kidding.
What'd you say?
I said you burn his clothes. That's
Yeah, you slash his tires. After all of that. I'm just kidding. I don't know. There was one night, it was dark outside, and I just walked outside, and I was just depleted. And I walk outside, I had a pool. The pool it was freezing cold. And I just walked fully clothed into the pool, and I just submerged myself. And then after that, I took a shower in the pool house, a cold shower,
Yeah.
freezing cold shower in the dark. And later I learned that I was kind of going back to the womb. I was going back to that safe space, the darkness, the
quiet.
the quiet, and then the surrounding, like the by the the water,
Safety. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think I am a little witchy, Allison.
You are. Yeah. I like it. I like it a lot. I'll teach you some things.
Please.
So one of the ways, if you ever need to get rid of it and, some energy that you're holding on to, or the kids even can use this technique, is when you take a shower or a bath and the water's going down the drain, you visualize the ex-husband, his hooker, whatever, anything that's bothering you in your life, and you just say, down the drain, away from me, down the drain, away from me, and you
that's
repeat it.
beautiful.
You repeat it 3 times.
Okay.
That's the part of it that's craft. And then you visualize it going through a pipe away from you till you can't see what bothered you anymore. You'll feel so much lighter when you get out of the shower. And I do this after readings or after any tension, or,
like to cleanse the
yeah,
energy.
it's sort of a baptism of the soul. It
I
really
love that.
helps. Yeah, so that what bothers you doesn't physically manifest in you. You're letting it go. You can also picture somebody you love, like your grandmother, somebody standing at the foot of your bed with a huge basket, and you're going to take whatever bothers you, whether it be an attorney or an ex-friend or whatever's just really grating on you, and you put all of those things in the basket, and the person holding the basket that loves you is going to smile at you, and they're going to turn and take all of your problems away. And
I love
that helps you to sleep at night. So
Yeah.
if you teach your kids these techniques, it really does help them to navigate difficult points in their life and to be able to remove that upset energy from them physically so that it doesn't become part of them. Also, writing it down in a book is physically putting it somewhere else, or in a journal, so that it's not part of you. There's different techniques you can use.
Journaling does help, yeah, for me.
Journaling helps, and if there's something that's been an issue for a long time, writing it on paper and what your intention is moving forward in healing from that and not allowing it to be part of your life anymore, and then burn it.
There's all of these are such great examples of how I and anyone else could take control of
Yes.
Take our power back, get our power back.
Absolutely. And people are
You
too
make it
easy
sound
to
so
give
easy.
it. Oh, well, I've been doing this a long time, and you need to write it in red or green ink, by the way.
Why?
You'll have to ask Margaret Jameson that, but it has to do with the Appalachian Grannies. It goes back a ways, and so I don't question it. I'm like, okay, red ink it is. So it has something to do with the craft, and I don't know as much about it as she does, but she does share a lot of her information with me. And my daughter Fallon grows gardens and is sort of the natural little hedge witch.
Oh, wow.
So she's into the properties of the flowers and the lavender and anything that you grow. Plant rosemary at the gate so that negative energies can't enter the front of your house, that sort of thing.
I have some kind of crystal at my entry. It's the clear looking one.
I'll have to, the clear one, white quartz usually, nope, not white quartz.
I'll have to think of it now.
That's okay. White quartz, if people want to know on that one, it just amplifies any other stone you have around and makes it stronger.
When I was, so going back to kind of the witchy stuff, I forgot about this until we keep talking about this with Granny Magic. But I was, back in the day, believe it or not, I didn't totally grow up with the internet, and I would go to the library, and it was before I could drive, and so I'd go over to my friend's house. We walked to the library, and we'd sneak into the section about spells and witches. We knew that wouldn't be cool with our religion, our religious
that
school.
A girl.
And we'd read these books, and I would check out these books, and I would go and read these spells, and go to there was a couple old cemeteries within walking distance, and I would go to the cemeteries and I would try to do all the things. Well, once I think I got a voodoo doll, and I didn't know what I was doing. That's another thing. There's nobody to guide me. I was just inviting all of it in.
Yeah, that's not good.
No. And so there was a voodoo doll, which, gosh, is super creepy. And something creepy happened with the doll. It moved, or the pin moved in it or something, and that scared the living crap out of me.
I bet.
I was like, I am done. I threw that doll outside in my backyard. I was like, I never wanted to see it again. But I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. I didn't have any mentors. I couldn't be like, so Mom, I checked out some witchy books in the library and did a voodoo doll that creeped me out. She'd be like, what is wrong with you?
I wonder if the books you checked out were on the Afro-Cuban roots of voodoo. Because, it's a voodoo doll, and that's something white witches deal with. That's something that's more African, Cuban descent.
New Orleans-y, it reminds me of.
Yes, which can be a darker energy.
Oh,
honestly.
Yeah, it was dark. It was dark.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. No more dolls for you.
No. And also, I found out that you shouldn't wish ill will upon others, which is really shitty, because I would have a lot of ill will to wish on people, believe me.
There's a sense of knowing that karma exists, and not using karma as a weapon, but rather thinking of it as they're going to learn to understand the pain they caused others, and that gives me a little bit of peace knowing that they're going to learn something. Maybe you could look at it that way.
Right. So that's the struggle with my ego. But
yeah.
I do that. I don't wish negative energy, but
you probably have a bit of a warrior soul, though, too. And warrior souls, I have a little of that myself. We tend to think in war terms, and you can't help it. It's part of your energy. You just have to then. Do you have Libra or Aries in your chart?
I'm a Libra. Yeah. And I think I'm Libra. I'm Libra. I think Aries.
Yeah. So you look Libra Aries. That's what I was asking. But also Aries rules war. And I'm a Mars in Aries, so I act and react with aggression. And each of the planets and what it's in kind of tells a little about your personality. But it's going to be natural for you to want to balance the scales, and you to want justice. That's Libra.
I love justice.
Aries will get justice any way they deem fit.
Oh, that's okay.
So I have both Libra and Aries as well, and that's why I recognized it in you. So I just want you to know, don't be so hard on yourself, because your Libra is going to be like, that Aries, that devil in me. She's always getting me to do things.
I'm not going to be so hard on myself, because
it's
I
a
have
part of
this
the
push
energy.
and pull, you know?
Yeah, and that's because they're the opposite end of the same energy. So they're oppositions. They are the same energy, but they go about everything in different ways. Aries doesn't think before they act. They just do it. And Libra's saying, let's think of the consequences. So we have this constant dialogue going back and forth in us of Libra trying to keep Aries under wraps. And Libra doesn't always succeed. And that's okay.
All
Sometimes
right,
Sometimes
give
Aries
myself
is
that
like,
grace.
I don't have time for this, and I'm just going to clean house.
You might
And
have
they
just
do.
given me like a dangerous guidance, because Aries might just rear her ugly head now.
You know, I've learned to respect my Aries queen in me, because although it can rub people the wrong way sometimes, I feel at least I'm living my truth, and I weigh it more than most people do, because I do have Libra in my chart. And sometimes I just think it's worth it. And I'm like, okay, I've thought about it. I'm going to do it anyways. So
Yeah, I feel
it is
that.
what it is. You can't go through your life editing yourself constantly. That's not why we're here. And it's honestly a waste of energy. You want to be fair. You want to, be true to the soul that you are in this world, but it's not our job to correct everything in the world. And you'll learn that later in life. You're going to work really hard to fix things, as I have. I initiated the Amber Alert for the state of Arizona in 2000 and served on the task force to design that for the kids. And I was trying to balance the scales. And you know what I found out getting older? Yes, it helps. It saves kids. I'm very proud of the Amber Alert. They're letting, criminals out of prison at an alarming rate. So even if they're put away after, being put in jail after, being caught abducting a child, they're letting them out. So at some point you have to pray to a higher power and just say, you balance these scales. Please right the wrong.
I mean, I'm dealing with that on a personal level with the family court system, and seeing like the different kinds of abuse that exists, financial abuse, legal abuse. I mean, those are real. And
very much so.
You're essentially saying the same thing that I'm going through, except just on different issues.
Right.
And my Libra wants the balance, but my Aries wants to fight. And so I do it. And, there's going to be some days of reckoning coming up.
Absolutely. Well, let me know. We'll send out a mass energy spurt for you.
Great. I could use it.
From the people. So you and I have something else in common. And I didn't know this about you, but you and I have both been on reality television.
Yes. Both the Real Housewives, just different cities.
I know, that's so funny. I did My Fair Brady years ago too with Adrienne Curry. Well, Adrienne Curry's a friend of mine. She had won America's Next Top Model the first season.
Seems like she's got that fire in her.
Oh my God, does she have that fire in her? And Chris Knight. So I was at their wedding that was televised.
Are they still married?
Oh God, no.
Okay. I mean, reality show weddings, those don't have the best track record.
A Leo and a Scorpio walked into a bar. That should never happen. They're just a lot of attraction, highly combustible. But do you ever think that you would go back to reality television?
I mean, I was it was a different lifetime then, but I mean, sure, yeah, why not? I enjoyed it. I'm good at, I'm not mean. I'm not a mean person, but I don't back away from conflict. And I think I'm good at seeing the bigger picture. I was kind of the voice of reason. Now, my life has changed a lot since then. I think I would have a lot to offer, but I've also done a lot of personal growth. And so I just care less about the things that I used to care about, like luxury. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love luxury, but like a Chanel bag doesn't have the same meaning to me today as it did 6 years ago or whenever that was. And I just, I look at, or, wearing fake eyelashes, I mean, it's actually amazing that I even have makeup on right now. But
not me, I'm a Gen X. I'm all made up.
I mean, I love getting made up, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't have the same meaning as it used to.
I've noticed that with millennials. So I've done podcasts with other ones Hannah Ferrier from Below Deck. And she was I just had a baby, hair pulled back, like no makeup. She did not care. And I totally respect that. But we didn't even walk out the door to go to the grocery store as teenagers
without a full face.
So I just I can't do it.
Yeah.
Plus you're still at that beautiful age.
Well,
where you can look,
helps, but thank you.
That's a true story, but you can still look 17, which is amazing.
Well, thanks. I mean, I'm 38.
I never would have even guessed that. And I know on the inside sometimes we feel old, and then you'll look back on pictures of you and be like, oh my God, I look so good. I was so young, but I felt so old, and your soul's taking the hits. Doesn't show on the outside.
I try to remind myself of that too, because I try to think of my body as this vessel that I'm renting, and I want to that my soul is renting, and I want to really try to respect it, which is hard because we're still human, and we still want it to look a certain way and achieve a certain level of beauty or like body or whatever that may be, and so I try to look at my body and say, this is the best you're ever going to look, girlfriend. Like,
that's what I'm talking about.
You better love it.
Rock those red carpets.
Yes.
So can you tell my listeners a little about your upcoming retreats, and especially this fire ritual that I'm so excited about?
I'm so excited. Yeah. So, I've been in kind of a little bit of a funk with being an influencer. It feels a little shallow just to be an influencer, and I have this amazing platform, almost 1 million followers, and people listen to what I have to say, and sort of getting imposter syndrome from that, and so I did some soul searching over probably about the past year, and did a lot of outdoor activities, really pushed my body to do things, put my body and my mind. I did a lot of things with heights. I rappelled down a 19-story building. I hated every second of it, thought I would love it, did not, won't ever do it again. But I'm learning these things about myself. And so through this journey that I've been focused on, I've decided, you know what? I want to just continue the spiritual journey of growth that I'm on. And I don't know what that necessarily looks like, but I want to help other people with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not an expert. And I want to make that very clear that I'm not the expert. I'm there to learn alongside everybody else. And so I thought, I'm going to do a retreat. I went on a yoga retreat last year in Joshua Tree. It was nothing except yoga. It was not spiritual, but I loved the collective energy that we were all there for the same purpose, to do yoga.
Right.
And so I thought I can do this with a women's retreat. So I launched these retreats. So the Gaia Haven Wellness experience is what it is. And it's in Sedona, February 9th through 12th. And you are coming, and I'm so honored to have you there. And it's just it's essentially, I just created this retreat that's my ultimate retreat. Everything that I would love to do.
Spiritual getaway.
The spiritual getaway, and this collective beautiful energy of these awesome female souls who just want to grow and learn and just find out who they are and live authentically. And so, we're going to do a fire ceremony. That's the intro that we're going to.
I'm so excited about that.
I am actually so excited.
I'm coming to that.
You are? Okay, good. Yeah. I figured you were.
I mean, I'm a redhead. I obviously, when it comes to fire, I love it. It invigorates, and it's a way to renew.
It's going to be, for the intro, that's how we're going to check in the hotel and then boom, right into that. And I am I'm just so honored that, we have these, all these incredible shamans and healers that are going to be leading this, not only the fire ceremony, we're going to do a sweat lodge here in the retreat. And these are things that I would not have been able to do otherwise. And so
I think that's very cool.
Right? And it's only because other women like me have come together, and I'm nothing special other than that I have a platform.
I think you're special, and you're an expert in training.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where it leads me.
We'll coach you up.
Thank you.
We'll give you the cliff notes.
Learn me, Allison.
Yes, I will. I will teach you. I will teach. And Margaret Jameson, she's on Instagram. You might enjoy following her.
I do.
With Granny Magic, because she puts all the spells and the potions and stuff up. And I think you'd enjoy learning some new ones. And she's very cool. So I'm
and
excited
I love what
about
that does for women too. And that's really what my focus is on is I think, women, as women, we are nurturers and we're life givers, and we often put others before ourselves. But the fact remains that nobody's going to take care of the mama except the mama. And so we need to really go back into that space of loving ourselves. And a lot of women have forgotten how to love ourselves, and that's okay. But we can get it back.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of women go through an entire life with the carrot in front of the donkey, basically, where they're waiting for somebody to give them permission to take a break. And nobody's ever going to give them permission to take a break because, you've got kids that need something, you got grandchildren or siblings or parents, and someone's always taking a little part of you. And you have to self-preserve and go within and say, no, stop. Everybody, you can figure it out. I'm going to go take care of me. You have to put yourself in a priority area as well as everybody else.
As a single mom, I do everything. I take care of, I own a house that I take care of. I get the kids off to school. I go to work. I do everything. I'm the mom and the dad. And I have a nanny, a full-time nanny. And you know how I treat her? I treat her like a queen. I buy her great gifts. I give her tips. I ask her how her day is. I ask her if I can do anything for her. You know why? Because she's taking care of my children. And that means so much to me that she is treated like a queen. Well, when I think of myself, who's treating me like a queen? Who's making sure that I'm at the best to take care of my children and go to work and perform at the best? Nobody except for me. And so that's the best analogy I can think of, that I need to treat me as if how I'm treating my nanny.
You need to demand the peace of mind in order to be able to function as a mother with children, and you have a child that's dealing with an illness on top of it. And the fact that you treat your nanny with such respect is a beautiful reflection of you understanding what it feels like to not be treated that way.
Well,
so
I guess
you're putting some positive energy forward for her, and I think that's great. And also showing your children how valuable she is to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
thank you.
Where can my listeners find you? Because they're going to want to look you up.
Well, if your listeners want to join a retreat, there's several more coming up. We're going to be doing one in Zermatt, Switzerland this July, which is going to be incredible.
Nice.
Outside at the base of the Matterhorn, the famous Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps. Is going to be incredible.
Beautiful.
So you can go to GaiaHavenWellness.com. Or just find me on my Instagram at Meghan King, and you'll find all the info there.
Well, thank you for sitting with me and talking to my listeners so that they could get to know you. I know I could talk to you forever. That's why I'm just very sure we're going to be friends.
Yes,
and I'll know you for a long time.
Absolutely.
And well, thank you for enlightening us and
Thanks
sharing
for having
your vision.
Me. Glad I could be your millennial guest.
I'm honored, and you're my first millennial guest.
Yeah.
And I've been on 2 years. So
wow. Oh my gosh, that's saying a lot.
Actually, was the healer, is he a millennial? He's like an older
I don't
he might
think
be.
So. I think
I'm not
but
sure.
I don't know. I'll have to look him up.
Okay, maybe I've had one or two other ones that I'm blanking on, but you're one of the most important, obviously.
Oh, the healer. You're talking about Charlie
healer.
Goldsmith.
Yes.
He's older than me, but I think he might be like on the cusp of the millennial too. So yeah, he probably is.
So the turnover is supposed to really have occurred. They say 80, but it's really usually more like 81, 82, depending on the person that they would have been born at that time when millennials kicked in.
I mean, I'm 84, but Charlie Goldsmith is one of a kind, so he's probably like every generation.
Oh my God. I think you've got a fan, Charlie.
Yeah, no, he knows. He knows. He's aware.
The Australian accent just puts him over the top. It's not even fair.
Yeah, no, it's not. The playing field is not even.
Thank you all. I will see you in Sedona. And thank you to my listeners. I'm Allison Dubois. This is The Dead Life. And to all of my believers out there, don't stop believing.